Hello, my name is Alan Wakim, and I am with the Sons of History, and today we have a special treat. We have a gentleman here. His name is Colonel Dean Caswell, and he is the last surviving Marine ace fighter pilot. Fought in World War II, and he served on the USS Bunker Hill, and I will tell you a little. I'll let him describe a little bit about what he did and some of his stories, which I'm sure will be something people will cherish for an eternity. Okay, good afternoon, Colonel.
Good afternoon to you.
Pleasure meeting you, and ask you a couple of questions here. First, I wanted to ask, who is this, by the way, that is next to you?
That's my wife, but I'd like to ask, are you in the police business?
Why do you ask?
We're going to clear that up before we start.
No, I'm not a cop, but I do play one back in my early days, so okay. Which is unfortunate because now I can't run for office. Anyway, so tell me, who is this lovely lady that you have next to you?
Well, I met Miss Mary when she was married to Archie a long time ago. Of course, I knew Archie in 1945, kept up with him for a long time. When he married her, we all joined in going to various meetings and speaking engagements. A very fine man. He was high up in the CAF, startup with the Toro program. He was the operations officer for the CF for a long time, as well as had his own construction company. And I got to know her for quite a long time before we had the opportunity of getting together and knowing each other better.
Okay. Now, Archie Donahue was with the Cactus Air Force. They fought in Guadalcanal. Now, the battles fought at Guadalcanal was quite a struggle. We didn't have the superiority we have today. So back then, the Japanese Zeros and the Japanese pilots were very good, and we lost a lot of good people during that time. So the Cactus Air Force was frequently bombed, and her husband was a ace that fought in that unit. So now, question for you is that today with movies in Hollywood and were you in anything that became famous that they made a movie about? Do you recommend any books, any movies that you think help out our history so people can remember? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if I have any fame at all in the movies, it's because I was asked after returning from South Korea's war. In fact, I had 2 tours in South Korea. When I came back from that, the Marine Corps decided that they needed an ace to help out making John Wayne movies and do all the acrobatics and the air work. And so apparently I had no big mission to accomplish, and they assigned me to the John Wayne movies of, so what the heck? I'm working with my memory at this time.
I know that
Sands of Iwo Jima was one.
Okay.
And the other was the Fighting Leathernecks. And I did all the acrobatics and all the flying. When John Wayne shot down a Jap, it was me flying the plane. And when the Japanese was killed, I was flying the Jap plane that went round and round and round and crashed. And I did all of the dirty work. And when that was over, I was so glad to leave. But I got to know Wayne pretty well. Got to know the people he worked with. He got me a date with Maureen O'Hara, which made me famous.
Oh, wow.
The problem with that was that she always had her bodyguard with her. So Claim to Flame was about the end of that.
Okay.
Relative to film. Then we made a film for BBC on the kamikaze, both the American side and the Japanese side of the use of suicide pilots as a strategy for keeping the United States forces from getting into Japan proper. That was a pretty good movie, and it's on the History Channel now. So I was in that. Archie was supposed to be in that, but he was ill at the time we were making it. And that's the end of that.
Okay. What now? Are there any moments or events that stand out while you were serving? Things, whether it might be having met famous people like John Wayne, or just events that took place while you were in combat. What stands out the most?
Tough question, because now we're talking in time and always flying. I had over 10,000 hours of flight time in the three combats, and some flying I did on my own.
And what did you fly?
Everything. In World War II, I flew the Corsair most of the time. We had many aircraft in the military available from the Navy, and the Marine Corps had their own. I flew 56 different types of airplanes, doing different types of things, including airplanes of my own that I bought when I retired from the Marine Corps. So there was a lot of flying involved, a lot of flying stories, which I've written books about. You cannot fly 10,000 hours in fighters and aircraft of that type without a lot of things happening in the air. Before I left the Marine Corps, I had an air group of Phantoms, brand new Phantom tubes, made by McDonnell Douglas.
You talking about the F4?
So there's so many stories there. I've written several books about it. There were some outstanding ones of how I escaped, bailouts that were of story form. Was in the water several times.
It's the longest you ever stayed in the water?
Not long. The helicopter was there. During World War II, I never had that problem. We didn't have helicopters in those days. We had destroyers that were on rescue service. They were able to find most of the people they were looking for. And therein lies so many stories, all true. The bravery of people that were involved, but most of them not me. I really would like for you to ask for a specific story or an era, because the era of flying for me changed.
Okay.
I soloed at 16 before I ever got in the Marine Corps, in a Piper Cub. Then the airplanes changed as I went along, and I got into the supersonic flight before I retired.
And which flight? What type of plane was it?
Oh, we had, I guess the first supersonic plane that was truly supersonic was the F-8 Crusader made by Grumman.
Okay.
I had the occasion to fly twice the speed of sound a couple of times, and that's interesting. I also flew backwards from 52,000 feet, straight down backwards, and that's a story in itself. But the engine had quit at 52,000 feet. There's no air up there for a jet engine. And then the F-4 Phantom was very, very fast, but it was made for different things. There's many stories of those.
Now, you, I know you're an ace, so therefore you shot down at least 5. What?
At least 5.
How many?
Actually, I shot down 15, but there's another story there of how they counted aces and the jealousies and competition between services, recording techniques of who did what. We have a lot of pilots in all the services in the various wars that were aces but never got credit for it. And it's not a good story, so let's not get into that one.
Okay, not a problem. Now, your combat, was the combat just in World War II, or did you do combat in Korea? You did combat in Korea, or you did just trained in Korea or Vietnam? Or
Well, I was an all-weather pilot in Korea. We supported our troops at night in their attack. We tried to intercept MiGs at night with jet night fighters. We also had other aircraft, the Tiger Cat, F-7F, we used at night. And we would illuminate a battle going on with a multi-million candle-powered light. We would drop it and would spotlight the enemy and the action below, and then we would go in and support our Marines in the attack. Not given very much publicity, but it was very dangerous. We had no way of knowing where the ground was at night in those days. They have equipment now that does that. Mm-hmm. So interestingly enough, when we illuminated the battle going down below, we'd close one eye so that when the light was on, one eye could see what we were attacking, the bombs we were dropping or the rockets we were shooting. And then when we pulled out from our attack and the light was gone, we opened the eye that had been closed. Now we can see our own instrument panel.
Okay.
It was an interesting way of flying at night.
When you did all this, were you frightened, excited, or was there just too much adrenaline?
Always scared. Anybody that's not scared is not going to make it very long. It makes the adrenaline flow. It makes you more intensified in the things that you have to do. Some people call it courage. It's plain fear sometimes. But you know what you must do. No courageous action in there. You're fighting for your country. You believe in what our country is. That's all built into the way you grew up. I grew up on a ranch and on a farm, by the way, and that helped me because I learned to use the shotgun when I was 10 years old. And most of our aces could relate to them knowing how to shoot birds with shotgun. And in our day, the gun sights were not very modern, mm-hmm. So we would use our bird shooting technique to shoot the enemy and lead them wherever they came from, mm-hmm. just like shooting birds.
And where did you grow up?
In Blanco, Texas.
Blanco, Texas?
Blanco, Texas.
Okay.
It's not very far from here.
No. When you think back to your times in the war, do you look at it more as fondness because you had a lot of friends, a lot of brothers, or is it more of a bleaker picture that you would like to forget, or is it a mixture?
All of the above. My experience in real combat, I mean not just shooting once in a while or seeing the enemy once a week or whatever, it was every day. The squadrons that I flew with, we'd lose half of the pilots in a year's time, or sometimes in 2 months' time. Flying off of a carrier against the kamikaze, you got too close to a kamikaze and tried to shoot him down. When he blew up, you would blow up. That kind of situation. When you got back, I've told Mary so many times, I'd come back from a mission, land on the carrier, sometimes good bad weather, sometimes good weather, sometimes at night. And the first thing we would ask at debriefing is, well, who got it today? It was just an everyday occurrence. And you learn to live with that. It does not make you a good man. You become another individual. And I can talk about that for a minute. Those people who are defending our country and face the enemy daily lose half their friends every day, or badly wounded and see sights that are beyond description. They develop an attitude of survival that make them very angry men whose view of life is totally different than what they were raised with. And when the war's over, they have to get rid of that to become a normal thinking individual, and it's a hard job to be that way. I've gone through that 3 times now. You just don't want to be that kind of man that you had to be to put up with combat.
Regrets? You have regrets?
It's not. Mary, what do you call a combat person that
Post-traumatic
goes through that
stress.
trauma?
Post-traumatic stress.
Post-traumatic stress. It's a modern description of coming out of a combat situation into civilized life. And I think most of us make it. Some apparently don't, or they claim they don't. There's deep anger there and disappointment and sadness and tumultuous feelings that can catch up with you. So then you have to get rid of that so that you can raise your children properly and kiss your wife properly and act like a normal human being like you used to be. If you don't become that hard-headed combat man, for the lack of better expression, then you probably will lose your life anyway. All the defensive organisms of the mind and the body have to take hold to get shot at every day and still survive.
You still have a lot of friends left from those times? No?
They're gone. I was born in 1922. 2 weeks before Pearl Harbor, I was a private in the Marine Corps. That's a long time ago. So my friends are gone, most of them. Archie's gone.
I'd like to respond to that. We have a room in our home that we turned into what we call a ready room, which is like on an aircraft carrier. They have ready rooms where they brief and then debrief after every flight. And what Dean has done, because his squadron was at Midway and then also on the Bunker Hill, the same squadron. They had, I think, the second most aces that were ever recorded in any squadron. He has a picture of each of those men in a glass case in our ready room, about 3 by 4, and a little history of their background in their flight suits. And every morning when he wakes up, he turns the lights on in that cabinet to keep their memory alive. Every single morning.
I have the cabinet that she speaks of. I have 15 aces in it. They were all in one squadron. 36 pilots shot down 187 airplanes. And these were men that were called aces. Now, there were some others not given the credit, as I mentioned. But they're all gone.
They're all gone.
They're all gone. Most of them didn't get back anyway. It's tough business. And it's angry business. I commanded over 6 squadrons and 1 battalion in my career, plus 1 air group. where I trained my pilots how to be angry men, to be deadly men, and still survive, and still act normally, when they were not in combat. And it's a lousy, tough job.
You mentioned at dinner about the number of aces that are left. Would you like to tell our audience what it is that you mentioned? You're with an ACES organization.
There are 32 ACES of all services that remain of the number that were counted in 1948. There were 1,452 ACES that were counted for World War I, II, Korea, and Vietnam. And only 2% of all the pilots trained, as you heard. 70,000 pilots trained by the United States in those wars. Only 2% became aces, and they shot down 460 some odd of the enemy. 4,650 of the enemy.
Mm-hmm. And there's only 32 left.
Only 32 left. Okay. And there will be no more. Now, we are making a movie now, a documentary by a very fine and experienced director. His name is Drew Adams, and he's made over 200 documentaries. He did documentaries of television programs, and he did some John Wayne movies, and he's very, very good. And we have a contract with him in making a history of the aces, because once they're gone, we have a lot of memorabilia, but not put together in a movie form. So we're looking forward to finishing that. We just got started. It's very expensive, but we're going to use it for our association, which we're converting to an educational foundation. And we're going to educate teenage children to describe what kind of men made the aces, and for them to learn how to be young men and women who don't throw rocks at windows and riot in the street and don't go to school, and some of the things that we are seeing these days. We like what we've started, and we're going to finish it. And if it's good enough, we may extend it to a 2-hour documentary, because there's a lot there to teach young children how to be good citizens, to stand up when you have the national anthem, to salute the flag, to be patriotic. We're not teaching that anymore. You don't find it being taught in schools. Like when I was in the 8th grade, for instance, when the teacher walked in for the first class, we stood up. And while we were standing up, we sang the national anthem, we saluted the flag, and then we said a prayer. And that's the way we were taught, so it helped make us good citizens. And our country is being filled with people that are not good citizens. We have to change it, or our country will change. I'm not going to get political. I got a speech for that.
I know. Well, that's why we're talking to you. So for posterity, for preservation, for American history.
That's right.
Now, is there? I know it's late in the evening. Is there anything that you would like to say to?
This is why I said yes, I will do this, because both of us strongly believe in what we used to have, and that we'd like to see it persist for our children. She's a great-great-grandmother. And I had 7 kids, and guess what they've got?
Probably about the same.
Isn't she pretty?
She is a beautiful woman.
She's lovely. She's a very wonderful wife.
She's always been sweet every time I've met her, and I've met her at numerous air shows.
And I like girls.
It makes two of us. But she has always been an absolute sweetheart at every air show that I've been to, and I've been going to them now for about 20 years.
It's a long time, isn't it?
It is. It is. I remember meeting Robert Morgan, who flew with the Memphis Belle, and Tex Hill, and
Oh, yes.
Oh, you knew all those guys.
I knew. Oh yeah.
Great.
Jim Sweat?
I met Jim Sweat.
That's an education.
I met Jim Sweat and Tom Farabee and Dutch Van Kirk and several other men who are no longer with us. Great men.
Well, some of these guys taught me how to be a combat pilot, and if that wasn't a rigorous activity, and without that, I wouldn't be here. Wouldn't be.
Because it was the pilots that survived Guadalcanal that were sent back to train these young men, this 21-year-old, to fight on the Bunker Hill. And that's what they would tell them. Maybe it's rough, the training that you get, but we're trying to help you save your own life. So please listen carefully. That's what he's talking about.
Jim Sweat had a saying he said all too often, because he would get us to do things we didn't really want to do. He said, the reason I do this is so you won't kill yourself.
Colonel, I must say it has been an honor and a pleasure speaking with both of you. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Sons of History, on behalf of Grateful Nation, thank you for taking the time to sit and talk with us. And we will preserve your words for posterity, for history, so that people will learn and people will remember you and will never forget. Thank you both.
Very much.
Thank you.
It's Mary's and my honor to do that.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm Alan Wakim. I'm with the Sons of History, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Take care.